thank you very much for this kind invitation to DIPICON 2025. It's a great privilege to be part of this discussion and this important conference. And I'm only sorry that I could not be there in person. I'm particularly grateful to Dr. Sendil Kumar and Dr. Saranya for including me in these deliberations and from the chance to sort of listen to all of you and learn from all of the wisdom in the room. Let's quickly go through this because I think we're a bit short on time. So this session is all about engaging with the media. As we know, public health, a good part of public health is all about public health promotion. There's a lot of advocacy that it needs to be part of our job as public health professionals, but that we really get time to do in a proper systematic fashion. So let's quickly go through some quick tips and tricks for how we can do that in an organized way. Next slide, please. So I'll go off camera so that you can just concentrate on the slides. Yeah. So I just wanted to start out with some basics about the media, which most of you are already familiar with. As you can see on this slide, the media falls under two broad categories: paid media and unpaid, or the news media. So when you pay money to the media house to publish an advertisement for a vacancy in your department, or maybe a message for World Malaria Day from the minister or something, that comes under the paid media, sort of category. And sometimes organizations, whether it's corporate houses or the health department, we pay for space in the newspaper, or we buy airtime from radio and TV houses to talk about our issues. And these are known as advertorials, where you buy space and then you write your thoughts in the form of an op-ed, but it's an advertorial. Right? Organizations, usually governments, pay media houses a lot of money to write special features, particularly when they're launching a new thermal project or a massive health project or something. So the news media, on the other hand, in contrast, they report what they feel is important for the public. So they tell stories based on the developments they see around them, whether it's in politics or climate change, business, health, sports, entertainment, and so on. And many of these stories can come from press releases from organizations, or from attending and covering a particular media event, based on the invitations you send them. And if you're paying for space in the media, the main difference is if you're paying space for the media, you can control where you want your ad to appear, when you want your ad to appear, and how big is the space that you occupy, whether it's on radio or TV or in the printed media. But when you work with the unpaid news media, namely independent journalists, we control nothing. So you have to deserve to be written about, you have to earn the distinction that you're worthy of coverage. So this is the main difference. It boils down to that core principle of what you can and can't control. So since we are surrounded by a lot of health coverage in the media these days, particularly post-COVID, is there a way to sort of understand how we have better control of the narrative that comes out in the news media? Next slide, please. So we're just going to quickly look at some key aspects to cover over the space in the next 25 minutes or so. One is, how do you really develop key messages that resonate with the news media? These are called SOCOs, or single overriding communication objectives. The second thing is, how do you pitch story ideas to journalists, and how do you write an effective press release? And the third thing is, how do you give really good interviews on radio, TV, and print, and tailor social media content by target group? And maybe we'll just touch a little bit on crisis communications, a dreaded part of our daily lives. And then maybe we'll just devote just a couple of minutes to the idea of developing a yearly communications media outreach plan. Next slide, please. So where do we start? We basically need to start with becoming very active consumers of news media ourselves. So we need to become contributors to news media content ourselves. So we need to appear in the news or be part of find a way to get our content, our ideas, our messages into the news somehow. So to do that, the first step is to consume the news ourselves. And to be able to consume the health news, it's very easy these days. You can subscribe to a number of health feeds so that those feeds the main health news globally, or at a national or regional level pops up on your screen. So it's not like the old days where one had to go out, going through a number of publications to just sift out and gather and collect what the trending health news of the day was. Today, it can all come into your inbox in a relatively quick period of time. So there's different reasons why we do this. If we are planning to seriously engage with the news media, it's good to know what's trending right now in the news. For several reasons, we can pitch story ideas to journalist friends. A journalist might suddenly call you up and ask you to respond to an unraveling controversy somewhere. Look at what the American president, Mr. Donald Trump, said just the day before yesterday. Reinforcing that old myth of the link between autism and vaccination. So someone might call you up and ask you to respond to that. So knowing what's going on in the news right now is a great way to sort of understand what you're in for and how to leverage an opportunity in the news space that you can get your messages out. The third important thing about tracking the news media is to also get an idea of who are the journalists that are covering health well and who are the ones who are not doing such a good job in spreading misinformation. So it's good to know who the local reporters are, particularly the local language media as well as the national and the global media. Who are these characters that are filling the news pages with health content, and start building relationships with them. So there's also a fourth reason. It's easy to understand what are the health issues that deserve coverage but are not getting coverage at that point in time. It could be World Malaria Day, and maybe apart from the ad that you've paid a lot of money to put into your Dinamalar or into the Hindu, there's practically no journalist writing about malaria. So was there something that we could have done to step up unpaid or independent news coverage of malaria around that time? There's a reason why we want the unpaid or the news media or the independent journalists to participate in our health education efforts. It's because they carry so much more credibility. Unfortunately, when it's an independent news report by a journalist, even though we are much more technically qualified and we have bought space, it's always like we're pushing a government line or we're pushing out a set of messages for a vaccine manufacturer. There's lots of conspiracy theories out there. So when independent, high quality or high profile journalists take up our issues, we tend to get many more eyeballs as well as more credibility. Next slide, please. So how do we get, next slide, please. Can we go to the next slide? Yeah. So this is a really interesting question. There was a survey done some years ago, maybe about like 25 years ago, by a couple of journalist scholars. It's a very famous book called The Principles of Journalism. And they went out and asked journalists, what makes the news? So what do you think news is? And one of the journalists, one of the senior editors told them that the news is pretty much what I say it is. So in a large, in large part, it's editorial decisions about which piece of information to put on the front pages of the newspapers that determines what the news of the day is. But there are some basic elements about what gets certain kinds of content into the media. And the first of these, if you can just press the button, Jeevanand. Can you just press? I mean, the animated, the points. Yeah, the first of these is novelty, really. So the novelty, let's say, let me use COVID-19 vaccine examples throughout this presentation. So it's very easy to sort of relate to it. So when the first information came out about the AstraZeneca vaccine and so on, then that's what made the news, because it was novel. There was no vaccine for COVID before, and suddenly during the pandemic, on the trail of a number of deaths all over the world, suddenly there we had a vaccine, and so that makes the news. The second thing is timeliness. If you can press the button again, just press the enter button again, please. Yeah, the second major aspect is timeliness, and this is really, so close to the heart of journalists. So something that happened yesterday is old news by today, right? And today in the world of 24/7 news media and online media, practically, you see news coming to us around the clock. 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago, 50 minutes ago. That's how fast the news is traveling and getting published these days, oftentimes without much verification. But there you have it. Timeliness is something that we'll have to live with. So it's going very fast these days. So timeliness is a very, very important part of the news, what makes the news. So again, using the example of the COVID-19 vaccine, adverse event related to vaccination, COVID-19 vaccine, we all know the story I'm talking about, in Pune, and then they started attacking other Poonawala's company and so on. The moment it happened, the moment the thing surfaced, the journalists were all over it. So timeliness is something that we have to be very alert about. What sorts of events in public health that are unfolding on our watch might suddenly find themselves in the media, and we'll be asked to react to it. So timeliness is the second major thing. And the third thing is proximity. If you can just press that button again. Yeah, proximity. Things that happen close to home, health news from Salem is likely to make it into your local publications. And if it's important enough and it has national import, it might filter all the way up to the national media. So things that are close. So we're not worried about what's happening on the Solomon Islands or somewhere in the, in Europe, but proximity. So these are the things. If we can, when we talk to journalists, keep these three elements in mind, that what I'm telling you is something new. It's a new development. It's a launch of a new program. It's a release of a new research report. It's timely because it's fresh and new. We're just going to launch it, or we're just going to release the report. It's going to appear in the Lancet, but it's embargoed until such and such a date. And the third thing is, it's all about what's going on in Tamil Nadu or going on in India. And it's very, very important for the local population to know about. It's much more likely, you have greater chances of making it into the newspaper or the online media when you keep these three elements in mind. And it's very easy nowadays. The WHO has made it very easy because there are a number of international health days. So, all you need to do is, if you want a story about malaria to come in the, in the press, then you just tell the journalist it's World Malaria Day, or, it's World Breastfeeding Week, or World Blood Donation Day. And that's a good way to sort of make these things topical. Next slide, please. So, yeah. Here are some examples. If you keep pressing the button, you'll see examples. Yeah, these are some of the articles about the timeliness, the proximity, and these are also, unfortunately, the kind of headlines that find their way into the news. So here's a sort of a hit on the Madagascar president, who's was a well-known vaccine skeptic. Next slide, please. So, as public health professionals, we have to keep in mind three questions every public health message should answer for its target audience. And this is something that, is not really my sort of slide as such, not my ideas on the slide. It comes from someone who's no more, Professor Elliot Churchill, who was for several years the editor of the CDC Atlanta's MMWR. So it's three basic questions. So the first question, if you will press the button, sorry, this is annoying because I can't press the button from my side, but can you please press that button, sir? The enter button? Yeah. The first question that the public health message should answer is, why should I care? Your pregnant woman in the village is going to ask. The way you communicate that message or that piece of information is, why should she care? The second thing is, what effect will this have on me? Second, can you press it again 2 more times, please, so that we can see all the three? Yeah, what impact will this have on me, whether it's vaccination or whether it's having an institutional delivery vis-a-vis, a home delivery? And the third important thing is, what kind of action do we expect the community to take? So what do you expect me to do about it? What do you want me to do? Do I need to come for an ANC checkup, or how often should I do it? So it should be very clear. Why does this matter to me? What are the impacts it will have on me or my loved ones? And what do you expect me to do about it? So these three questions, not just empty questions, not just empty messages that malaria is dangerous. That makes no sense. It is just hanging in the air. But if the messages, we have a very short time with the community and we have very limited time as part of our work, if these three important aspects are covered, for the community, it's really far more a better worth and use of our time. So these are the things that need to get into the media at the same time, right? So the next slide, please. So news stories that show how vaccines, why vaccines matter, or how it's going to benefit communities, or what the community should do about it. Come to a particular day at a particular time to this vaccination camp. These are the three examples I can give, and this is something that the journalist would be quite happy to cover. Next slide, please. Yeah. So I'm just going to quickly move on to developing these powerful messages. As we know, from the Dr. Dorji's talk as well, he showed a lot of data, and there was an interesting interaction, with the person in the audience. And the evidence is always questionable. We have to look carefully at where the weight of the evidence lies before making public health recommendations. But let's say there's a simple way to convert evidence into powerful messages for the media that you would like to see in the headlines, that you would like to see yourself being quoted on television or something like that. So let's take a simple example. I apologize for this slide. It comes straight from a presentation made for Sub-Saharan Africa. But let's say this is true. There were 2,000 cases of measles in Zimbabwe in 2022. As an aside, Zimbabwe has a very powerful apostolic church tradition. They believe in natural healing. So, the pastors tell their congregation not to take the children for vaccination, but that's why. You saw 2,000 cases of measles in Zimbabwe in 2022, and about 157 children died. And if you take this data is just raw units of measurement, right? It just doesn't mean much unless you put it in context. And that's when the data becomes information. So this is 7 times the number of cases from the previous year of 2021. And how can you turn this data put into context, which is information, how do we turn it into a message for the media? If you can just kindly press that button, sir. If you want to talk to a policy maker, right? If you want to talk to a policy maker, it could be something like, invest to restore access to MMR vaccination on a war footing. During the lockdowns or because of the church, advocacy, people didn't go and get vaccinated. The message, if you're talking to a policymaker, I'm sorry. Right. If you're pitching the message to a policymaker, sir, can you please press that button? If you're talking to a policymaker, it could be invest to restore access to MMR vaccination on a war footing. And for every dollar you spend on vaccines, sir, can you just press that button? Then the messages will pop up. Yeah. Once more, please. Can you press it once more? Yeah. So for every dollar that you spend on vaccines, you can save $20 in healthcare costs. So on the right, you can see the same data and the same information. If you want to pitch the message in the form of an editorial or a short social media post or a WhatsApp message, you can use the same data and information and talk to policymakers with that last message. If you want to talk to parents, or if you want to talk to people who are in charge of vaccination, the relatives of the family members, the elders in the family who make decisions about it, it could be ensure that your infant is vaccinated for measles, right? So it's the same thing. You're letting people know that there were measles cases and deaths, which are just going up, which are spiking, and it's a problem because of the lockdown. So quickly, you need to start getting the MMR vaccine efforts back on track. So to parents, ensure your child is vaccinated. So that's something you would put into, like, let's say, a woman's magazine where mothers will read it. Whereas the other message about investing and restoring access to MMR vaccination is for policymakers. So, so what is really a message? A message is really information which is conveyed so that it's actionable and it's in a way that communities can understand its relevance or its importance to them, right? And the next slide, please. So the single overriding communication objective, like what is really the most important message I want to convey to people, it can turn into a soundbite. So when it's there in the printed media, it tends to sound more officious or more prose-like. But when you talk the message, you can convert the SOCO into a soundbite. A soundbite is a very short, pithy quote or a statement which stands out. That when you say it on television or when you say it on on the radio, people really remember what you say. So if your single overriding communication objective was better vaccine storage, cold chain and transport facilities are urgently needed to improve vaccination coverage, this sounds like something out of a journal article or a print interview. But when you turn it into something for television, if you're on camera, you can talk it like this: we urgently need transport and cold chain facilities to take the vaccines to where people are. So that's far more communicative and effective. So here is the same SOCO rewritten as a soundbite for the media interview. And you should notice that the soundbite is very short, it's clear, it's true, it's evidence-based, it's persuasive, it conveys the importance of the issue, and so on. And then you have to bolster this with some data. Next slide, please. So your SOCO can become a newspaper headline. For instance, here's an example of a SOCO that became a newspaper headline. Vaccination is also a must for young and healthy people. This is again all COVID-19 examples, right? How about this very nice SOCO: COVID vaccine saved 20 million lives in the first year. So these are all memorable short statements, right? So lack of cold chain and transport facilities are the only barrier to achieve vaccine coverage, targets say experts. So obviously, this particular headline and SOCO is targeting policymakers or international NGOs who can come and fund and help us overcome these gaps, right? And so the COVID vaccine saved 20 million lives. That's a very powerful statement to help fence sitters maybe take a positive step towards vaccination. And vaccination is a must for young and healthy. It's for general public and audiences everywhere. Next slide, please. So essentially, the SOCO can focus on remembering those three things: novelty, proximity, and timeliness. What is new, what works best, or what has changed, even if it's an old vaccination program, what has changed in your approach to improving vaccination uptake. So are you doing suddenly door-to-door drives, or are you taking vans, mobile vaccination clinics to, Kullimalai up to where the gypsy encampments are, and so on and so forth? All of these things can turn a regular public health endeavor into something new and novel and exciting. So changing the views of someone who's very skeptical about vaccines is quite difficult. And, usually they say, you should try to bust the myths around vaccines, but we're going to just focus on one thing, which is rather than mentioning the myth and then busting it, it's better to replace the myth with accurate evidence-based latest information. So you essentially take, the tactic of replacing bad information with good information, replacing harmful information with useful, actionable, and accurate science-based information. That's a far better thing. So here's a very simple step-by-step guide to creating your SOCO. Write down the data you want to share with the media. It could be something like, anemia levels being high in a particular district. Then add context to help journalists understand its importance. Say in women who are anemic, the risk of dying during childbirth or having an unhealthy pregnancy is X. If you're targeting women or you're targeting husbands and wives, you can develop your SOCO for that audience. Make sure your wife is eating XXX food. Make sure that she's having regular ANC checkups. And then it's relatively simple, even with inexpensive methods, you can tackle anemia and make sure you have an institutional delivery. So, and you can, when you talk to journalists, take them on the field trip. You can, sort of give a few case studies, respecting the privacy and confidentiality of the people that they are meant to interview, as well as, so add color, add a human face to these issues. And essentially, vaccination needs to be pushed and presented as a social norm, as something which is quite the norm. So as health workers, as health professionals, we are among the most trustworthy voices on the planet, and we can achieve a great deal in public health promotion if we put our minds to it. Next slide. How are we doing on time? I think I've run out of time already, right? Saranya, how much more time do I have? Next slide, please. I'll be really quick. I'll skip a few slides and I'll leave the presentation so that you can make use of it. Keep your SOCO short. If you deliver one single message with a powerful punch, I can think of a very popular
sorry for the interruption, ma'am. Sorry for the interruption. Yeah. Ma'am, we are ahead of time. Can we take another three minutes, ma'am?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. So give them very short, punchy messages. Make it short, clear, evidence-based, and supported with 2 or 3 information that is necessary. If you can go to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. These are just a few slides about becoming a trusted source for journalists. Is really important. Have you noticed that some doctors are on the news all the time, and many doctors who are excellent in communication are not on the news, primarily because they're out there in the field doing their job, and they don't have the time or they don't feel confident enough to face the media. But becoming accessible to the media, if you create a habit of being accessible to the journalists and educating them when they need you, there are many more chances that you will appear in the media. And we have to practice. It just doesn't come off the top of your head. We need to practice our SOCO, decide on the data and the evidence, put the data and information in, turn it into information, setting the context very carefully, particularly the local context, and then making it into an actionable SOCO or a sound bite. So if that's practiced and kept, before you meet the journalist or give the journalist a call, and if you sound great on media, they will keep calling you again and again. The other thing is, we always think we should use the media, but the name of this talk is engage with the media, take them on as partners and friends, respect their deadlines. So even if we are not part of the story, by giving them data and information, or by clearing their doubts or explaining what something means, there's a confidence interval. What does that mean? What is a p-value? Just take a few minutes to try and explain to them in simple language, this is what it means. And even if you're not part of the story, they will respect you and come back to you. So you can become a media teacher and they will keep coming back to you for quotes. And when they do a bad story, we always complain about it. But what about the times when journalists do very, very good stories? Use that as an opportunity to email the journalist or tweet out their story, appreciating them and tagging them. That's how you build the relationships. We'll just skip all the slides and go to the last one about crisis communication. All these are just, easy stuff that you can follow. Just go to the last slide. This one. I just a couple of minutes on this. So the next slide, please. So this is something that, particularly in the government service, it's a huge issue. Journalists always tell me that it's very hard to get interviews or quotes out of anybody working in the Directorate of Public Health or in the any government service anywhere. So but the thing is, you can't direct every question. You can't kick it upstairs all the way. If there is a policy, if there's enough courage built among everybody in the organization to say that up to this point you can answer these questions to the media, but this part alone you can direct it to me, then there's a greater chance of building confidence and better bridges with the media. So these are some of the things that can happen if there's an information leak, or about disastrous coverage that Gorakhpur deaths got. Lack of oxygen in hospitals, and some of the even during COVID, there was a lot of bad press and so on. Next slide, please. And it can really affect the trust that the public puts in us. So being proactive and accountable and transparent cuts far more ice with the media and builds far more trust, no matter how difficult it is. And you need to have a crisis council of war inside, depute internal spokespeople, and you can't become a spokesperson handling crisis overnight. You've seen yourselves how bad some of the deans and the superintendents and the doctors sound when they're on TV. Even if they've done nothing wrong, they sound guilty or they don't know how to communicate. So it's got to be a team effort to sort of counter that.
Sorry for the interruption again, ma'am. A small reminder.
Yeah. That the time is up. Yeah. So I'll leave the slides with you. And if there are any questions, I'm very happy to take them. Thank you very much.